Hi, Adam.
Hi.
8. Daf Shekalim 8.
You
And
know,
it starts on Zion Amud Beis on the bottom, the Mishnah.
okay.
Bishloisha Prokim Ashana Tormi Masalishka. 3 times of the year. That means when anyone put in money into the box for the shkalim, they would end up putting it into a big room, and they would gather there. And then 3 times a year, the Kohanim would sort of empty out a certain amount, and these were used to purchase the animals that were used for the Korbanei Tzibur, like the Korbanei Musaf, the daily Tamid. They did it 3 times a year, but Prosa Pesach, which is 2 weeks before, or really 15 days before Pesach. Be Prosa Atzeres, 15 days before Shavuos. Be Prosa Chag, 15 days before Sukkot. Ve'im Gronish Shel Meiser Behema, the Rabbi Akiva. Now, somebody who was in the business of growing cattle, so they would give Meiser Behema also these 3 times of the year. Any animals that were born between let's say between Prosa Pesach and Prosa Atzeres, any animals born, Meiser Behema was given. That's where Rabbi Akiva learns. Benazai Omer Be'esrim V'Sisha Ba'Adar, that it was different. They did it the 29th day of Adar, Be'echad B'Sivan, the 1st of Sivan, of Esrim V'Tisha B'Av, and the 29th day of Av. Rabbi Akiva didn't give you an exact day. He said half a month before. Because the month of Adar, according to Rabbi Akiva, sometimes 30, sometimes 29, he can't fix. So he wouldn't know exactly the date for the Meiser Behema. According to Ben Azai, Adar was always 29. So that's one point for the Machlokas. He also gave a different reason for the middle one because he didn't think that the period of time, 2 weeks before Shavuos and the 2 weeks before Pesach, gave you enough time for it to be meaningful. So he pushed it off to the first day of Sivan. Rav Lezer, Rav Shimon Oimrim, Be'echad b'Nisan, Be'echad b'Sivan, and Be'esrim V'Sisha Be'Elul. The Gemara will tell us what part they're arguing with. Why did they say that it should be done the 29th of Elul? Because Echad B'Tishrei is a Yontif, it's Rosh Hashanah. The Yevshel Aser b'Yontif. Lefichach Higdimu B'Esrim V'Sisha Be'Elul. So that's why they brought it earlier on the 29th day of Elul. Pras. What is the word pras? Palga. Palga means half a month. Palga, the Shoshimim Kodim Lamoyed, 15 days, Shadorshim Bel Chaysov. That was the period of time that they had to start learning the halachos of the Yontif. Vehein Gronois. The days that they took the money out of the Lishka was the same days that they did for Meiser Behema. On Rav Yechton, Mipnei Shein Pirkei Leda. These were the periods of time that the animals gave birth. Some gave birth before Pesach, some gave birth before Shavuos. Depends on how long their pregnancy. Ravach Rav Tanchem Barchia b'Shem Rav Yeshua ben Levi, Kedei Shetia Behema Mitzila, they regard a different reason. Since Meiser Behema was offered as a korban, so they're, but the other ones are not necessarily Hegdish, so they could be made available to sell to the Orlei Regalim for food. Also, if you make a neder to bring a certain gift, so some hold that Baltachas, if you don't bring it before that Yontif, some say it's 3 Yontifs, it's Machlokes, but this way, if you do it before the Yontif, you're not going to be over in the Nedorim. And if you don't if you don't give these meisters at the right time, you're going to be over Baal Tachya. Tamon Tanina. So we learn in the Mishnah, Reb Meir Omer, Be'echad Be'elul Rosh Hashanah L'Maiser Behema. The first day of Elul is the Rosh Hashanah L'Maiser Behema. It means any animals born before that is in one fiscal year. Any animals born after is another fiscal year when you count to do the Maiser Behema. That the cutoff is Echad B'Tishrei. Ben Azai Oimrim Ha'eluli Misashim B'nei Atzran. Ben Azai had an interesting shita. He said it goes from Echad B'Tishrei to the 29th of Av, and that's one period of time. Then the month of Elul is its own period of time. And then the other ones. On Rav Huna, time Rav Meir, which is Bechad Be'elul, Adkan Hein Misansois Leilid Min HaYishonos, because the birth period from the old ones continue until then. Mikan Ve'lechen Matchilas Leilid Min HaChadoshos, and then the animals will have new pregnancies only from that time on. That's based on the season. Rav Yosef Rav Bun B'Shem Rav Huna, time at Rav Elazar Rav Shimon is Lov Shukoi Matzon. When it says that tzon wear a certain type of coat, Elo Abakiros, those are the ones that ripen early. The Amalkim Yadfu Bar, Elo Afilos, the ones that ripen late. Yisoru Af Yashiru, Elo Nechlosin Ladir Lisasha, but it doesn't make a difference. Either the early ones, the late ones, they all go into the same corral in order to be counted. Amr ben Azai, Hol ve'elu oimrim kach ve'elu oimrim kach, you have a little misashim with neatzman. So since there's this machlokes, Elul is its own. Haketzad. So noiled law b'chamisha ba'av, b'chamisha be'elul, b'chamisha b'tishrei. Let's say you have 5 animals in Av, 5 in Elul, 5 in Tishrei. So none of those gather because the 5 in Av are added to the old ones. The 5 in Elul are only counted from themselves. The 5 that are born in Tishrei for next year. However, noiled lo b'chamisha b'tishrei v'chamisha ba'av, harei elim mitztarfim. But let's say you have 5 animals born the 5th of Tishrei and the 5th of Av, so they're in the same year. So now you have 10 animals. Now you can do Meiser Behema because you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Uven Azai machri al divrei talmida. Is Ben Azai compromising? Also, Rav Yimir, Rav Mishra, Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak, shekei nechlu alei avoy so'ila. The fathers of the world, who were the great Talmidei Chachamim of the previous generation, already had a machlokes. Umaninu avos so'ilam. Who were the avos so'ilam? Tan Rabbi Yonah, Kamei Rabbi Yomi, Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Kiva. These were the avos so'ilam. And remember, Ben Azai was in the same generation of Rabbi Kiva. Zoi Soimeres. In fact, the Gemara is going to prove from here. Ben Azai chaver v'talmid havid Rabbi Kiva. Ben Azai was a colleague, not a talmid. He was a talmid chaver. Why do we say this? In Tamar Rabbi, is Parnasham al Rabbi Hol ve'elu v'amrukach ve'elu amrukach, because to refer to his, if he would be his Rebbe, to say, oh, this one said this and this wouldn't be a covet. Must be, from the Gemara's learning, that Ben Azai was a Talmid Chaver, a colleague, not just a Talmid. Rav Avim Hashem Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak Shama Lo Min Hada, Amar Lo Ben Azai, Ala Chalukin Anu Mitztarin El Shabbat, Lach Lo Kaleinu Sashavin. Beis Shammai Beis Hillel disagree. And Zoi Soimeres, Ben Azai Chaver v'Talmid Havid Rabbi Kiva. So another, because of the way they spoke, it seems that Ben Azai, in his dialogues with Rabbi Kiva, was a Chaver, not a Talmid. In Tamar Rabbi, Ispar Nasham Rabbi El Shabbat Lach Kalenu Sashavin. You couldn't say to your teacher that kind of language. Tara Taminon. Kol hanoiladin me'echad me'tishrei ad esrei me'tishrei be'elul. Havu elu mitztarfim. The animals that are born from the 1st of Tishrei until the 29th of Elul are one fiscal year. You can put them all in the corral to count them. Chamisha l'fnei Rosh Hashanah, chamisha l'achar Rosh Hashanah mitztarfim. But if 5 are born on the 25th of Elul, and 5 are born on the 5th of Tishrei, so they're in 2 different fiscal years. They're not mitzdarf. However, when we gave those other dates, like in the Mishnah, 15th day before Yontif, that is not considered a cutoff. Amrav Yosi, Hado Imeres Meister Beim Lo Oisoi, so Lo Kechenet Lo Kishlish. It was not the same like fruit, where fruit, they would only give Meister, let's say once the fruit is grown to 1/3 or to 1/2. No, it's for animals, it's all or none. Because in Temer Kechenet, if you're going to say it's like fruit, Listi Kolamu Bar Me'echad Mitishrei, that's a Mitishrei Elul. You shouldn't just talk about the ones that gave birth, even the animals that are any animal that was pregnant in that period of time. We don't say that. In Temer Keshlish, listen Kolanodim Adesim U'Shnayim Be'Elul. And or if you're going to say that it goes like after fruit, so you can only offer an animal as a korban once it's 8 days old. So maybe the cutoff should be the 22nd of Elul, because then you could offer it as a korban 8 days later. But we don't say that. So it's not like fruit. Rav Shai Shem Rav Bibi Rav Chia, no, Kishlish Asu Asok Rav Shimon. To Rav Shimon Mechus Rizman Nichlas L'dir L'Isashria. It is like a shlish, but it's not a problem, because Rav Shimon said even an animal that's Mechus Rizman animal is an animal prior to 8 days old, because you can't give it as a korban. But even so, according to Rav Shimon, you can put such an animal into the corral to count. However, Kam Rav Mana in Rav Shammai in Omerle, Adam et Chadam Milsa, you say this thing that it's according to Rav Shimon. However, Tamon Taninon, we learn a different Mishnah that Benazai Omer, Ha'elul Misashrim La'atzman. Only the month of Elul are counted the same. So how could you give me this example of the 22nd of Elul? That wouldn't work until the 29th of Elul. So is Chomer ben Azar Rav Shimon like Rabbanon? Are you telling me ben Azar only hold like Rav Shimon, not the Chachamim? So Kamada Adomer al Rabbanon. What do you mean? Just like the animals born at the end of Elul, like the rabbis, who say that it goes together from Tishrei to the end of Elul. They all go into the same year, no matter whether they're 8 days old or not. You could say Ben Azai as well. If the animals were born in the last 8 months of Elul, and maybe you can't do Meiser Behema on them because they're less than 8 years old, he puts them until the next year, and they're put together with the animals born after Tishrei. That this period of time that they're lacking because they're not 8 days old, these days are also counted for in the new year. You count them from the day of birth, not from the day of its life. You count it for its first year from the time of its birth. Mishnah. They collected the coins in 3 baskets. Each basket measured 3 saw. So the total was 9 saw. The cost of Aleh and Aleph Beis Gimel. And the letters Aleph Beis Gimel were written on each basket. And there was a certain order. First they filled Aleph, then Beis, and Gimel. And they bought in that order. Rav Shmuel Omer Yevonis cost of Aleh. Rav Shmuel said it was written in Greek. Alpha, Beta, Gamma. Because the Meforshim say that it was common to write in Greek at that time. like English. It was like the lingua franca. It also says Yavta Lokim Liyefes. So Greek was an acceptable language to be used for Davar Shebikdusha. And since it was a language that was understood by everybody, they decided to write it in Greek. When the Kohanim would go into that room to collect the money, you didn't go in with a pair of pants that had a hem or a cuff, because they were concerned. Maybe people would say that he's stealing, he's putting money in his cuff there. Below b'minol, not with a shoe, below b'sandal, not with a sandal, below b'tfillin. Because again, money could be hidden in these places. Below b'kameya, an amulet. Well, now what? Shema yeyoni. Perhaps if the person became poor, yoimru me'avon alishka yeyoni. You know what? This guy got poor because he was stealing from the lishka. Shema yashir, or just the opposite. If he became wealthy, yoimru mitrumas alishka yashir. He got wealthy because he's stealing from the trumas alishka. And it's not. You should never put yourself in a possibility of people suspecting you. A person should appear righteous in front of people, not just in front of Kadosh Baruch Hu. You should look clean. You shall look righteous in front of both people as well as HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So, very important lesson. Tamon Taninon. Mefanin afilu arba v'chamesh kupos. That you can remove, let's say you have baskets of straw in a room and Talmidim want to come in there to sit. So you're allowed to move even 4 or 5 baskets on Shabbos for people to have room to sit. Reb Zer Shalas Rabbi Yoshia, Kamahu Shiurin Shel Kupos. How big do these baskets in order to have, can be, and you can still have permission to move them? Amr Lei Nilmod Sasum Namafurish. Well, we don't know the answer to that question. Let's learn an answer to a hidden question from something that we know about. The Tanya, b'shalosh kupos shel shalosh soin, shein tisha soin, that these baskets each measured 3 saw, 9 saw together. So when you do the 3 different trumois, shein esrim v'sheva soin, 27 saw, Torah Salishka. Because of Alei and Aleph Beis Gimel, that's our Mishnah. Now, because of Alei and Aleph Beis Gimel, why did you write that? Loimar, mistabik ben Arishon kodem l'shniya, because you finish buying all the animals with the first basket, and you don't use the second basket until you finish the first one. When Ashniya kodem l'shlishis. So they want to learn that the baskets that you can move on Shabbos for the Talmidei Chachamim to come sit there is also 3 saw, because that's the only place where it's mentioned a certain amount. You asked me what the amount is. We should learn Sosum and Amafurish. Tamon Taninon is another example. We didn't know exactly what the measure. We learned it from someplace where there's an open measure. Amoitzi Yayin. Remember, we learned in the Masechta Shabbos different shiurim for carrying on Shabbos. Like we asked, if you carry this and this item on Shabbos, Daled Amos, you're going to be chai, but how much do you have to carry? We went through a lot of detail. Each item is a different thing. For example, Amod Siyayin is Kedem Zika Sakos. If you're going to carry wine, right, let's say from a Rishus HaYach, Rishus HaRabim, the amount that is carried is the amount needed to dilute a cup of wine. It's a quarter of a quarter log. So it's a small amount. Rab Zeir Shalos Rab Yoshia. Kama Shir and Shalkos. What's the shear of the kos? Armalei Nilmat Sosam Namafurish. Well, we don't know the answer to that, but let's see where it's openly said. Arba koises she'amru yeshnan, the 4 koises of the Seder, yeshnan ravin shel yain bin talpi. It's got to be a quarter log of raw Italian wine. Now, normally you put 3 parts water to 1 part wine, so it's 1/4 of a quarter log of raw wine is the shear. This is the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda. Tani, the mayim, the amount of water to carry on Shabbos is kedei gamia. The amount of water in a single swallow. Rabbi Yehuda kedei loshu penas akilor. It's the amount of water to sort of clear your eye. And yayin is kedei gamia. Enough wine to swallow. Rabbi Yehuda kedei mezikas hakos. So here is the source that the din is according to Rabbi Yehuda, which is a quarter of a quarter log. Now, mazuk bekama. Let's say the wine's already been diluted. So nishma min adah, mayim kedei gamia. Water is 1 swallow. You don't kedei loshu benas akilor, to clear an eye. Yain kedei gamia. The Tanakama says wine is the amount to swallow. Rabbi Yehuda kedei mezigas hakos, the amount is for the dilution. How much is the shear of Avinamer? Tirton urevia, which is a quarter log, and tirton was a more familiar measurement. Now, can you drink the alba koises, all 4 together, without any kind of hefsek between them? Must there be a hefsek between them? So, Midam Rab Monon Rab Yosi, Hallel. So, on the night of Pesach, if you heard Hallel in Shul, that's it. Yotza. You don't need to hear it. You don't have to repeat it at home. Hada Amra Im Shosan Bikrachechad Yotza. The same Andamar said, if you drink the Alba Koises in 1 shot, you're also Yotze.
But we don't paskin like that.
No, remember we had the Gemara in Arvei Psachim. We went through it.
Right. We don't paskin. So how come it brings it up?
This is Yerushalmi. Remember we said Yedei Yayin Yotza, but Yedei Cherus Lo Yotza. We went through that whole Gemara there. There we paskin Allah. Now, Mar Lishtos on Bepiska. What about if you drank like little sips? Klum Amr Sheyishta Lokadei Sheyishta V'lo Sheyishtaker. What are you supposed to drink not to become drunk? If you drink it that way with little sips, he's not going to become drunk. You don't have to drink all of it at 1 shot. So it's not a problem. Can you use yain that was produced during Shemitah? Yep, you can be yoitze. Kunditin is like wine with spices. It's like yain. You can be yotze with such yain. What about with diluted wine? Whether it's raw or diluted. It's got to have the taste and the appearance of wine. Should be red. Boy, we should have learned this blot 2 days ago. We should have learned it on Pesach.
We should have learned it. Could have learned it during the Seder.
Yeah. Shenemar altera yain ki sadam. No, the best wine is red wine. That's why, if you look at all the charts, it says l'chatchila you should have red wine. If you don't have red wine, you should have white wine. But you should have white wine before you have grape juice. So even though grape juice is red, it's more preferable to have wine because it says yayin. But it's best to have red wine. Tani mavushal kimitubal. That yayin mavushal can be used. It's like spiced wine. Ma'olat says beyond muvur can be yoitz dalit koises. On Rav Yoda yoitz beyond muvushul. You can be yoitz beyond muvushul.
It seems lechatchila you should have non-mevushal wine.
Correct.
But
Correct.
today to get
that's hidur. That's your yotze with yain mevushal, but it's more mahuderdik that you should get a yain she'ena mevushal.
So they knew that the yain she'ena mevushal was later wine.
Absolutely, they knew that. That's in fact why they asked the shaila here. But the Shulchan Aruch says you're yoitze b'yain mevushal. But lechatchila you should do it yain she'ena mevushal unless the yain mevushal is a higher quality wine. If such a thing exists, could be. If there could be a very expensive yain mevushal, it's even more higher quality than a certain type of wine that's eina mevushal. So then you should use even yain mevushal. On Rav Yonah yotzim b'yain mevushal. Rav Yonah l'tat. So we pass like Rav Yonah. Rav Yonah kad avishasi arba kasi de pischa avichazik reisha chaga. Because he would get like a headache. He had a headache until Shavuos. So therefore, it was a heter to use this yain mevushal, which was easier to drink. It didn't give you as much problems. There was a Roman matron, that's the matronisa, who saw Apui, his face was Nehirin, was shining. Amre. So she said, Saba, you old man, you're either you're drunk, or you loan money with interest, or you must, because that, or you sell pigs. Because in that business, you made a lot of money. So Omer Lei, Tipich Rucha Dai Itza. He gave her a klala that something bad should happen to her. Because none of those things are connected to me. I'm not a malav beribis, I'm not drunk, I'm not Nagal Chazirim. Rather, El Upanish Chiachli. I learn, and the learning lights my face. The wisdom of a person will light his face. It's from Koheles. Ravavo Asil Tveria. Ravavo visit Tveria. Chamorne Talmidoi. The Talmidim of Rav Yochanan Apu Norim saw that Ravavo's face was also shining. So the students told Rav Yochanan, Ashkach Ravo Sime. He must have become very wealthy. Also Gabe. So when Rav Avo made an appearance to Rav Yochanan, Amarle, Maya right Shmat. Rav Yochanan understood. He must have heard a good chiddush. Amarle Tosefta Tika Karale Chachmas Adam Torponam. I heard an old Tosefta which I'd never heard before. And then my face lit up. Aram Chanin, Luga Deraisa, that the Torah's log, because it mentions log many times in the Torah, Tmunasa Tikat Deraisa Titis Poiri. So there used to be a shminis, which was some kind of eighth measurement that they measured Morish's fish brine in Sipoiri. On Rav Yinu Chachmanale, the base Rav Yanai have a mechilin badvash. So even though, of course, the way they measure is different, he knew that old measure, because Rav Yanai in his house they would measure dvash with that measurement. However, Tani Chatzi Shminis Tvernis, that this Revius Halog was half of this eighth measurement that was used in Tveria. Okay.
Long
Okay. So Mirza Hashem,